What do we mean by democracy? Democracy is not just an election. There are a lot of places in the world which have elections, but that is a electoral democracy, can be quite empty. A real democracy is something that has genuine diversity and has the ability to dissent. It's basically the founding stone of a democracy is really where we do not have to agree on anything but the rules of engagement. Hi, I'm Pallavi Iyyer. I'm here at the Kerala Literature Festival and I'm doing this video for Apostrophes. I'm really a traveler, a journalist. I've been a foreign correspondent for Indian publications for the last 25 years, spending long periods of time in China, in Europe, in Indonesia, in Japan, and I have written books about all of these places. My latest book, which is the book that I am now presenting at KLF, is called Travels in the Other Place, Pursuing the Self in 8 Acts. And this is actually a slightly different book to my other books, which have mostly been about places and reportage, whereas this one is a travelogue with a twist where it looks at inner journeys and inner escapes. And I look at more metaphysical forms of travel, like traveling through illness, traveling through grief, traveling through different hairstyles even. So I've given a kind of conventional travelogue, modern twist. And I've tried to look at the things that I've learned from being somebody who has been a perpetual peripatetic, somebody who's been wandering for the last 25 years. And what have I learned from those journeys? And if I can apply those also to these inner journeys that are really very universal.
Okay. As you said, Pallavi, as a journalist, so my question is, how much independent and free is Indian media right now when compared with the other media houses?
So it depends obviously in which country you're talking about, but increasingly I feel like Indian media is quite closely comparable to Chinese media, which is state-controlled, which has a narrative with an emphasis on good news, which has an emphasis on essentially trying to promote the nation and drum up a sense of national identity as a way of sort of, being an arm of the state to kind of develop the state, rather than the sort of Western US idea, which was that we are a fourth estate and that we are supposed to hold truth to power, like we are supposed to actually ask tough questions and be like a check and balance on government. So I think we've kind of in India really moved away from what was like this US model and become much closer to what was the Chinese model. What is the Chinese model?
Okay. And going forward, democracy is our strongest asset actually. We could keep our democratic values, we could keep our democracy for so long when neighbors had so many issues in between. So how can we hold this asset called democracy when the ever opposition media is being challenged?
Well, it's going to be very difficult. I think we've been seeing strains of authoritarianism creeping into our polity as well. And what do we mean by democracy? Democracy is not just an election. There are a lot of places in the world which have elections, but that is a electoral democracy, can be quite empty. A real democracy is something that has genuine diversity and has the ability to dissent. It's basically, I think the founding stone of a democracy is really where we do not have to agree on anything but the rules of engagement. But I think increasingly it's becoming very hard to disagree and to dissent. And if you disagree or dissent, you're immediately painted as some kind of traitor. So in that sense, in that sort of functional narrative sense, we're already becoming quite authoritarian and autocratic. And I think in order to be able to preserve the genuine democratic character of our polity, we have to have more space for a genuine diversity of policy opinions.
Across the world, issues like immigration and issues like carbon immigration has become a human issue actually, a human rights issue, not a human issue. So to tackle all these things, I mean, when you look back, as you are an experienced journalist and you have traveled far and wide the world, How you look at this immigrant issue and how it is going to reshape our world?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, every human being is an immigrant, right? We've all come from somewhere. But absolutely, we're seeing a return to a kind of tribalism and a concern with who belongs properly where, who belongs within these borders and who should be outside of those borders. We're seeing it within Indian states, we're seeing it with India and its neighbors, and we are seeing the same story being repeated in Europe, we're seeing it very much in the United States. And so what does that mean? That means that we're sort of moving away from an idea of the fact that, globalization, that the global movement of people, the global movement of ideas, the global movement of goods actually benefited humanity, to this idea that everybody should be going back into their neat and tidy boxes. And the big problem is who decides who belongs in which box and who polices those boundaries. I think these are going to be the questions that are going to define the 21st century going forward.
Are you hopeful about a good result in near future? Because Trump is an issue for everybody actually. Trump makes headlines every day, not just one headline. Headlines in the morning, in the afternoon, in the night, always Trump. And his allies are the most worried now, not even us. So when the world security or the world welfare is a threat, and when Aiden Kurdi's image is still fresh in our memory, is there any scope of closure for all these hangamas, all these headaches?
I don't know. I mean, on the one hand, I think Trump is just like accelerating processes that were already in place for a while, which was a gradual, over the last, I would say 30 years at least, decline of the Western liberal order. And in itself, I don't think it has to be a terrible thing, because the reverse side of the decline of the West is the rise of the rest. And we are seeing genuinely more space for other powers. And, the Western liberal democratic order was always a kind of self-serving, hypocritical project. And in many ways, I think with Trump, we're basically seeing that the emperor has no clothes. I mean, it's exposed for what it's been. So the hypocrisy is there for all to see. But a lot of what is now kind of just very naked was something that was continuing in any case for a very long time. And what we are seeing now is the kind of decline of that order. And in that moment historically, there's always chaos, and when there's chaos, it can be very worrying. But we have to see what kind of comes out of that, and whether we will see genuinely a more multipolar world going forward with greater diversity when it comes to norm setting, agenda setting than we have had in the past. We'll have to see whose interests the so-called international order serves, because the international order is never like genuinely international. It's always whoever. In Hindi we have a saying, jiski lathi uski bhains, the person who has might is right, I guess it would translate as that, right? So now we're kind of seeing multiple centers of power emerging. So it's a very interesting time. It is a disturbing time because it is a chaotic time. And when you have the fall of one empire and the rise of a new thing that has not yet, the contours of that thing are yet not clear, it can be a disturbing time. But I think it's too soon to say like that I'm categorically pessimistic about it. I'm interested in it.
To just observe what's going to be happen, and how social media has affected the scope of journalism, the scope of factual journalism.
Yeah, I think it's actually killed it in many ways. Social media, because I'm also a professor and I teach people in university, and I teach people who are studying media in some ways. And when I ask them where they get their news from, it is uniformly from social media. I'm talking about North American students. So I've been teaching students from Duke University, Syracuse, and so on. They don't read newspapers. They don't understand. They don't watch television news. It is almost all coming from social media. And social media, is a very different creature to traditional news. It doesn't have the same rigor. It does not have the same fact-checking and gatekeeping functions. times, and it is very prone to kind of falling into silos, which means that essentially we only get a very one-sided view of the world because an algorithm is just feeding us more and more self-affirming ideas of what we already believe the state of the world to be in. So it means that people are very rarely challenged and, are actually becoming more and more naive. So the more information that in some ways is available today because of technology than was, say, 20 or 30 years ago when we were limited to our one newspaper. But in fact, people are becoming less and less knowledgeable because an algorithmic way of accessing the world is perforce a very limited and one-sided way.
So I'm changing my question for the journalist to a traveler. How the travels far and wide have changed you as a person?
I think that one of the main things is that you become transparent to yourself when you start traveling. What does that mean? You begin to understand that the things that you consider to be normal are actually not normal at all, and that there's no such thing as normal. What do I mean? Like if I were to meet, like, if a Spanish person and a Japanese person meet and they say, let's meet for lunch, they feel that they have agreed to something. But in fact, the Japanese person is thinking about 12 o'clock in the afternoon and the Spanish person is thinking about 3 in the afternoon. So, they're actually talking about completely different things. But to the Spanish person, normal lunch means 3 o'clock. To the Japanese person, normal lunch means 12 o'clock. So this is what I mean by norms. Our norms about how we navigate our day, how we actually navigate our world, what we are encoding when we are making polite conversation, what we are decoding when we meet somebody for the first time, in India, like people will ask you things like, oh, how are you? What is your name? Are you married? And they're just being basically, this is what passes for polite conversation. In many other countries, this would be an extreme intrusion into personal space. So all of these ideas start getting challenged about what are your implicit norms. And the more that you travel, the more exposed you get to a variety of these norms. And I think that you then start acquiring multiple lenses through which to view the world, and not just the one that you were born with and were taught in school. So it becomes a very important agglomerative process in expanding your sense of being able to inhabit, navigate, understand the world through multiple perspectives.
So nowadays, in Kerala at least, women travel groups are very active. Only women travel groups are there. Solo travelers also are there. Traveling among women has increased actually, without husbands, without children, and they just go. Do you really think that travels will, strengthen or improve personality, individuality, the world overview of women?
Absolutely. And I think solo travel has a lot of benefits because, you're then actually traveling by immersing yourself in where you are rather than in the conversation of the people that you are with. So sometimes when you go with a group from somewhere, you actually end up just taking wherever you are, everywhere with you. You're having the same conversations, you are carrying your aloo ka parathas with you. I have been to the top of Schilthorn in Switzerland and met a couple from Delhi who had brought aloo parathas from Delhi and were eating there on top of a mountain in Switzerland. So, that's just a metaphor for a way of traveling where you actually travel but you don't leave because you're mentally, physically still very much in the same place that you were. Solo travel almost perforce takes you outside your comfort zone, and it breaks that ability to, physically be in another place but mentally still be where you were, because you have to pay attention. And I think the most important thing about traveling, if it's going to be something that's going to expand your sense of consciousness and allow you to develop these multiple lenses I was talking about, is if you actually pay attention and meet the world with a sense of openness and curiosity and focus rather than looking at your phone or chatting with somebody. Because more and more we're very distracted, and what we can read, if you travel as a distracted person, you might as well not leave home. So I think that sense of attention that is necessary for travel to really become an educational process or an expansive process, it's easier sometimes when you are solo.
Thank you so much, Pallavi.
Thank you.